Imagine a place where students use media, creativity, communication, and critical thinking to make stories come to life. A place where authentic audiences are enlightened by the kids who live there. Hawk Media Productions at Kealakahe Intermediate School, located in Kona, Hawaii, is an example of that place where students strive daily for the summit. From school broadcasts, Hiki No stories, community spotlights, and now podcasts, Hawk Media Productions hopes to inspire other schools to get involved in meaningful learning in the community and the world. Believe it or not, all schools have the students, teachers, and community partners to be the spark for what school could be in Hawaii.
Welcome to Season 1, Semester 2 of the What School Could Be in Hawaii podcast. This series features the stories of creative and innovative educators who are influencing, motivating, and inspiring Hawaii, the nation, and the world. Now, let's send it off to your host, Josh Rapoon.
Hey everybody, this is the What School Could Be in Hawaii podcast. My name is Josh Rapoon. I'm your host. And this morning we're here with Chris Stapleton, who is the principal at the Asia Pacific International School in Hauula on the north shore of Hawaii, of Oahu, which is a 97-acre campus, and it's nestled up against the mountains on Oahu's north shore. How about that for a lead-in? Chris, welcome to the program.
Thank you, and it's as nice as it sounds.
Awesome. So, Chris, we're doing a format now in Season 1, Semester 2 that I'm calling 10 Questions. So you and I are going to work through 10 questions together. We'll do it in two parts, so we'll take a little break in between. And so I'm going to start with question number 1.
Sure.
So, Chris, the Classical Academy, where you worked for 2 years, has become the largest brick-and-mortar K-12 public charter school in the state of Colorado.
Sure.
So the question is, what is the Classical Academy, and in what ways did your experience there shape your philosophy of education going forward?
Yeah, that's certainly true. In fact, when I was there at the Classical Academy, they had a waiting list of 8,000 students. People, when their child was born, was putting them on the waiting list to get into the school. Of course, one of the reasons for that is kind of the religious nature of that area of Colorado and what that school stood for, but also because that school wouldn't allow for more than 20 students in a class. So they did have a cap, and so it was very popular. And it was based on a classical approach of, reading, writing, arithmetic, and more, traditional way curriculum, such as the Spalding method, for teaching spelling, and it was an interesting time because me, having come out of an education program in Illinois, graduated it from Wheaton College, and going to the Classical Academy, I had a certain passion and energy and excitement, and I'm a fairly creative person, but I love technology. And here I was thrown into the school where that wasn't necessarily the forte, the strength, the mission and vision of the school, and yet because of the size of the classroom and because of the people around you. I was encouraged. I was inspired to allow for those strengths of mine to come through, even though I dived into classical literature, which I found to be very important and culturally for our students to understand as they were making references in future poetry or songs or other literature. It was like, oh, we had read this text that we knew exactly what that meant once we read something that was a little bit further down the road. So, it was a good experience. It was, I'll have to be honest, my first day there, I walked in, said, can I have my class list? And they said, we don't hand it out to students. So I guess without my beard, I'm not Chris Stapleton, the country singer, but I will say I must have looked really young because they thought I was a sixth grader at that point. But it was a great learning experience. I spent 2 years there before transitioning over to Rock Rimmon Elementary School, which was an IB-PYP school, which I would say I learned much more about education there than I did the first 2 years at the Classical Academy. But it was a great experience.
So perfect segue into question number 2 then, which is, as an adjunct professor at the University of Colorado, You taught courses in education technology.
Yeah.
So the question is, like, how do you define, for those people who are listening to this podcast, how do you define education technology, and what were your goals and aspirations for your students in your ed tech courses?
Yeah, it was really important for I don't know. I was really frustrated that as a third year, fourth year teacher who loved technology and grown up in this really golden age of everything at my hands, I was publishing some of the earliest YouTube videos, right? I mean, 2005, I was in college and I was publishing YouTube videos right when it came out. I was one of the earliest adopters of Facebook, so like I was right there at that time. And when I got into the education world, it felt like every month I was learning about something new, and then people were trying new things all the time, and there was so much that was just coming down the pipeline, and I was like, whoa, stop. There are effective and there are ineffective. And what's effective for me might not necessarily be effective for you. Depends on your level of comfort using this and how often you'll use it, but it's about commitment. It's about sticking to something and using it well rather than using so many different things. And that's really where I was able to bring that into my classes at the University of Colorado. We started keeping blogs, me and my students, of like what we used really well in our classrooms, so that we could then keep track of that for future years, because I even now reference my own blog from then to go back to like, hey, I used this resource. What was it? Oh, yeah. And I go back and I look exactly at how I used it. And instead of just looking through, I mean, you could just type in AR education, and you'd find so much on augmented reality. And I'm like, what was that one resource I used over and over again with my students to build pop-up books, so that when we looked through phones, we would see the AR images that popped up, or we'd hold up a QR code, and on the projector, there'd be these fake trees and birds flying around and everything else. And we brought to life our stories based on this one AR website. And I was really excited about it. So you can see I'm one of those people who loves it, but I'm all about like stay focused, stay committed. You find something that works and stick to it, and maybe the next year with a new class you can transition over.
Quick side tangent question.
Yeah, sure.
So this is so cool, because for me, and I was already a kind of a veteran teacher, same time, 2005, 2006, I also kind of exploded into the YouTube channel. I was going one-to-one in my classroom with MacBooks and so on and so forth. Chris, I have a theory that right around that time, we all went collectively insane around ed tech, and that we became so mad and crazy about this that we started to think that technology was the end and not a means to an end. And then somewhere a few years later, we kind of regained our senses and put technology back in the box where it belongs as a tool, and we went back to pedagogy, which is the heart and soul of teaching. What do you think about that theory?
Yeah, I think it's true. I think to some degree we give too much credit to our students for where they are with technology, though. I think there's this idea of this native versus this person who's learned it, and
they call it a digital native.
I kind of like my students, our students at our school. They're on their phone and things like that, but they don't know how to use technology well just because they're on their phone or their computer. Right. There's a lot of things that still need to be taught about how we use technology well and responsibly, effectively, how to be able to tag search real quick. I can find many things just because I know a little bit of something. So I still think it's really important that technology continues to be taught explicitly within courses somewhere along the lines. People need to be using technology effectively in their classes to show students what it's capable of, and also teaching those students how to use that technology. Otherwise, I'm worried that we're just assuming that students know more than they actually do. And when they graduate and aren't able to figure out certain things, it's like, well, who taught it explicitly? We used to, but it's kind of put on the back burner.
Fair point. Okay, so question number 3 then. Eventually you moved to Seoul, South Korea, and began to teach at the Asia Pacific International School. So you taught middle school and you did tech integration. So the question is, for all of our listeners out there, what is an international school? And what were the highlights and success stories of your tech integration while you were at Asia Pacific?
Sure. An international school is a private school taught overseas with an English-speaking curriculum. It's been accredited by an agency that allows for students to be able to graduate from that school and move to colleges, universities in the West. So there's international schools all over. And in Korea, it's special because the Korean government has put in place certain rules in the past decade that has limited how many Korean students can go straight into international school. They have to, for instance, certain rules like 3 years abroad, or they have to have a certain passport, or, there's certain expectations. So what happens is many Korean students will be sent over to another country because education is so important in Korea or any Confucius country. They'll be sent over to another country for 3 years or get different time abroad and then head back to Korea to be able to go into that international school system, which is pretty competitive. While I was at Asia Pacific International School, which is a school of 300 students founded in 2007, with the same mission and statement that I have now at my Hawaii campus, I was given a lot of autonomy. I was given it was progressive. It had great, up-to-date, modern curriculum. It was exciting, and one of my favorite things I did was I brought Minecraft EDU into the classroom as a middle school teacher. I taught ancient civilizations, and during that time, I was able to. I got all my 20 students on computers. It was a 1-to-1 laptop ratio, and so the students would get on Minecraft, and we would build the ancient civilizations. And I used that tool to then make commercials and teach advertisement and teach marketing through it. I used that tool to teach speaking and listening skills. I use that tool to specifically also teach the content. So it was what would be at the center of those civilizations. Well, that tells us a lot about that civilization. What would they farm? Where would the farming be? Where would the different classes of people live? What kind of nature is around that? And they would be a part of that building process. And then at the end of the year, we would have one giant map with all these civilizations on it. And we would have at our end of year party, our EOY party was about a giant treasure hunt that was a competition where they had to find specific treasures all over this Minecraft world that were based on the ancient civilizations that they had created, and it was a lot of fun.
So two things real quick. One, okay, the top of my head just blew off. Okay, so I'm trying to imagine that kids are getting engaged because they're creating commercials for the Roman Empire, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Just
right.
like, what would those commercials look and sound and feel like for the Roman Empire? So that's one thought. Wow, fantastic. I'm also reminded. There's an amazing teacher here at Punahou School, Doug Keong. He invited me up to campus to see what he was doing with Minecraft, and I did not know Minecraft at that point. So what he'd done was he'd created a project where all of his 15 students had to create a school of their dreams from scratch using Minecraft.
Yeah,
and he did it on separate islands. So there were 15 islands, and your school was built on your island.
Yep.
So he was showing this to me as these schools were being constructed, and while we were looking through the screen, it started to rain.
Yeah.
I was like, wait,
that's
what?
important.
It rains
Sure.
in Minecraft? Like, you have to take the weather into account? He's like, oh, yeah, of course. So at that moment, then I realized really what the power of ed tech could be.
Yeah, and if you're selling an ancient civ, you're going to take the video at dusk as the sun's setting. Yeah. Right.
Why?
It's the most beautiful time of day to get good shots of your city, right?
Oh.
So you have farmers coming in from their work,
okay.
and the sun's setting in the background. It's like, this is how you're selling your place.
Okay, so we should stop this podcast, and we need to start a company, an advertising company, and you and I are going to make commercials for ancient civilizations that are long dead.
Yeah.
Okay,
that sounds good. That sounds great, actually. So.
Okay. Awesome. Okay.
But so really what I'm bringing this up because if I was in the classroom today, I wouldn't do that anymore. I think it was effective for many years. Minecraft is now everywhere, and everyone's playing it, and it's great. And when I brought it into the classroom, it was very trendy and fad, and like it would have lasted for 3 or 4 years. But now I would be in VR. I think right now we have a computer science grad from UCLA who's teaching at our school, and he is making VR games on side quests that can be on Oculus Quest. He has one right now. I'm an Oculus Quest user myself. I think this is exactly where we need to be right now. I think the Oculus Quest is a very powerful device, and we're only touching the surface of how we can use it. And I think students need to be there with us because that's where we're at right now in technology. So that's what I would be diving into with my students.
So, Chris, that's a perfect segue into question number 4. So before we dive into your arrival in Hawaii, I want to talk about Daniel Pink's book, A Whole New Mind, which you read and cited as influential. And by the way, side note, I learned in doing a little bit of back research on my own reading of A Whole New Mind that Oprah Winfrey distributed copies of Pink's book to Stanford's entire graduating class in 2008 when she did the commencement speech.
Sure.
So many people know that Pink was arguing for a new workout regime for the so-called right brain, the creative, innovative, imaginative brain. And he argued that the computational brain, as in, for example, being an attorney and drawing up divorce papers, was being rendered obsolete by computers, by AI, by the workforce in Asia. So question is, how did Pink's scholarship impact you as a person, as an educator, and as one of Hawaii's emerging education leaders?
Yeah, I think a number of ways. We often couple it with Carol Dweck's growth mindset. But it's really at the heart of the mission of our school, per se, which I am absolutely buying into, which is that Abundance Asia and automation transforms our education. It should. And it's because, so if you look at our mission, which you probably will reference later, but our mission statement, which has caring Christian community, has globally enlightened citizens, has bridging East and West, and then has new Pacific century leaders, you'll see that wow, isn't that what Daniel Pink's book is all about? Which is that we need to have students who understand the East and what's going on there and how abundance is growing here, and that these students need to be able to design. They need to be able to tell a story. They need to be able to have that empathy and be able to work with others. And when we then said, okay, so what makes a new Pacific century leader? At the heart of it, when we were looking at what we're going to emphasize at our school, we used Daniel Pink's book, The Right Side Brain idea of, hey, we need to be focusing on the arts. We need to be looking at East Asian languages and culture as a major emphasis in our school, which is why we offer Korean, Japanese, and Chinese at our school. And it only has 65 students at our school, which is amazing that we offer those languages. We said, hey, we got to continue to focus on STEAM, right? STEAM education and understanding the technologies of today, but also how we're developing scientifically. And then also, finally, we have that caring Christian environment, which that helps bring an understanding of empathy and selflessness. When I was at a Learning in the Brain conference, man, I guess it was 2010 or 11, Howard Gardner was there, and he had just published 5 Minds of the Future in 2008, I think. And his big keynote address at that point, and that's like 9 years ago now, 10 years ago, was he's working with all these Harvard students, and what he finds most fascinating is that their conversations with him is, I will do whatever it takes to get to the very top. It doesn't matter how I get there as long as I get there.
Right.
And he said that's an issue. That's an issue that we have to face right now, which brings back to that empathy, that caring, that nurturing environment of respect and responsibility for students. And I think, in my mind, that can't ever be put to the wayside. I think that's a crux to what a school can bring for students, is giving them the chance to explore what it means to be a part of this community. And we actually just heard that from Lori really well. Oh my goodness, she had so many great examples of bullies turning around and seeing, just being kind of given a mirror of like, this is what it looks like when you act that way. You know, what does it mean for you to be a part of our classroom, our society, you know, your civic responsibility there. And we just happen to have the chance of doing that under the umbrella of Jesus as being our major mentor and our model at our school.
Got it. So perfect segue into, again, question number 5. So Dr. Roger Sperry, who's a Nobel Prize winner and doctor of zoology, noted in 1973, quote, "Our education system, as well as science in general, tends to neglect the nonverbal form of intellect. What it comes down to is, sorry, I'm turning a page here, that modern society discriminates against the right hemispheres." So my question to you is, in your experience, does education discriminate against the right brain in this way? And if yes, why, and what do we do about it?
Yeah, I think it does, and I think one of the big reasons for that is that the teachers who are teaching these students weren't taught in a right brain system, and that really creates a sense of discord. As an administrator, when I have faculty who don't prioritize the design elements or the umbrella, the pedagogy, they don't see this. They don't see it equally important to the content that's being delivered, the information, the old traditional system of memorizing or being able to have a pacing calendar with breadth rather than depth, which is what Lori also talked about in the last segment. When they don't see that, why? Because, and it's not to their fault, they grew up in a system that they believe worked, that got them to a good college, that got them a job, and they want the same thing for their kids, which, boy, doesn't Ted Dintersmith talk about that really well in his How Likely to Succeed movie. Most Likely to Succeed movie. It's like, that's so hard to break those barriers down. It's like, how do we enable teachers? How do we, as adults, I can't wait for a generation who has gone through, I hope, some right-brained education system.
Amen.
Because if jobs are really requiring this, if jobs are looking at the design, the creative processes as being the driver for how they're employing people, can they think differently? How can they collaborate and communicate and work with other people? But also, how can they just, pull things apart instead of just put things together? And it's like, or rather the opposite, right? The analytical, but also the synthesis. I just wonder, when does that trickle down to colleges on a more global scale? Sure, it's great that Stanford can have admissions that doesn't look at certain scores or whatever, but we need more schools to have a more holistic approach to accepting students. And I think there's a wave for that, but it's really still not here yet, and it makes it a real challenge for even the elementary teacher in our system to give equal time to the right side as to the left side. So what I say is schools need to continue to build that environment where it is safe for teachers to integrate and collaborate with other teachers, so that there is something more ingenuity, more original that's appropriate within this context. And a big part of that is making sure art teachers are part of those dialogues. Yeah,
and you're really speaking to public, private, and charter schools. That's a universal concept. Okay, Chris, so we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with more insights in just a couple of minutes. So, hey, audience, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Purple Maya, our specialty is providing cultural-based programming to learn technology and computer science. We are always looking for teachers, volunteers, and schools to partner with. But our programs aren't only for Keiki. Heard of the Purple Prize? We're accepting applications now for Kamaka Inana, a design and venture ideation program for adults interested in creating solutions that positively impact the Pai Aina. It's about shaping the way Hawaii designs for the future. Visit us at Purple Maya or purpleprize.com for more info. Also, how major is this podcast? Keep up the good work, guys.
This is Toy and Amber from Entre Ed Talk. We are so excited to uplift this cool new podcast coming to you from the middle of the Pacific Ocean. What school could be in Hawaii? As always, we're super excited to support innovation and education. We've been lucky enough to feature some of these incredible educators on our own podcast, Entre Ed Talk.
If you're looking to be inspired by entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial educators from across the world, join us as we share their journey and insight. Be sure to check us out wherever you listen to podcasts at Entre Ed Talk, And like, subscribe, and drop us a review today. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, I'm Tyler Kern from Market Scale, and you're listening to What School Could Be in Hawaii, a podcast partnership between Market Scale and Josh Rappoon, exploring the latest insights and thought leadership in the world of EdTech. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts these days, or just head to marketscale.com, click on Industries at the top of the page, and scroll down to EdTech. We'll see you there.
Hey everybody, we are back with Chris Stapleton, the K-12 principal at the Asia Pacific International School on the North Shore of Oahu here in Hawaii. So Chris, you referenced earlier your mission statement for your school. So I'm actually going to start this second half here, the second 5 questions, by reading your mission statement out loud here. So your mission statement says, the Asia Pacific International School strives to educate its students in a loving and caring Christian environment to become globally enlightened citizens who are able to bridge the gap between East and West and are ready to welcome the exciting challenges of the new Pacific century. So here's question number 6. From your perch as a former middle school teacher and former dean of students, and now K-12 principal, what are the challenges of this so-called new Pacific century that you noted in your mission statement?
I think understanding culture is a big one. Understanding the differences between the East and the West. And in order to dive deeper in that, you need to be able to have a foot in both, right? So our students, I know that that when I lived in Korea, that economy is booming. It is doing very well and has great relationships with America. But I also live amongst, when I work with many different nationalities, but specifically talking about Korean culture and the way they make decisions and that kind of the way they communicate about one family versus, it's very family oriented. It's very and also save face oriented. And I really appreciate a lot of things about them, but it takes time to learn that about a culture. And I could imagine if somebody in the future who will absolutely have to deal with these different cultural roadblocks, if they don't understand how to navigate those and be able to have a real dialogue about something in a business place, in an education setting, in political place. Wow. If you don't understand the East, if you don't understand China, Japan, Korea, Southeast Asian countries, if you don't understand how they operate and how they think and where they've come from, then you're at a real disadvantage in this world because they are just continuing to bloom and blossom and grow as economic powers. And many of their students are coming to to America and being a part of our school systems and being a part of our jobs. And it's really important to, I think it's great. I think it's crucial for students from both sides. And right. I just said that from one perspective. It is also so important from the other perspective, and that's why as a boarding school, having those students from all over the globe, from Europe, from East Asia, be able to come to our school and then have local students also there, the cultural exchange that happens is so powerful. And that really helps bridge the East and West. We actually have 50 of our middle school students from our Seoul campus come to our campus in Hawaii for 3 weeks and have that cultural exchange happen. And we have our students from here go to Korea for a week and a half and have that exchange happen. And it's crucial that happens so that in this day and age where people fly different places just to have jobs, like you no longer are just working in a small area. You can work very much across seas. Jobs might expect you to work all over. Yeah. You need to have a better understanding of the cultures that you're going to be a part of.
That's a great segue to question number 7. We're doing good, Chris, in these segues, right? We've had quite a few of them.
That's my goal.
Already.
Provide good transitions.
So question number 7 is, I'm going to quote your school director here and his message on your website. Mm-hmm. So he says, quote, a student from our Hawaii campus could spend a semester studying at the Seoul campus, taking advantage of its East Asian language program and interning at an IT lab in Korea. A student from our Seoul campus could come to Hawaii to do research projects on eco-farming, natural resource management, and marine biology and conservation. So the question is, like, first of all, wow, like this is awesome, at least in concept, right? So this is super exciting, Chris. So in what ways is this cross-hatching happening, and what results are you seeing in terms of student engagement?
Yeah, and I just want to do one plug in here. Our director, that's his story. He came over from Korea to New York as a young student, went straight into an education system that wasn't well suited for students who were learning English, but then still made it through and did an amazing job, went to Dartmouth, and then he realized that he had a real leg up in the world understanding East Asian culture and understanding the West. And that's where this all comes from, is that he lived this life and realized, oh my goodness, I have a real advantage here by understanding both of them in an economic sense, really. But then it trickles down into other sectors as well. So anyway, just want to do that plug-in because it goes back to why we have the mission statement that we do. It is much easier because we're a boarding school and our international school in Seoul is not a boarding school. It's really easy for students to come over to our school for a semester. We've seen students be able to dive really deep into microbiology, marine sciences, agriculture. We're much more of a rural campus than our Seoul campus is. But we have had our students also head over to the Seoul campus and be a part of what we consider to be a much more urban environment. I really see it a lot more because I came over here when the Hawaii campus started, so I know my stories at the Hawaii campus much more than I know the Seoul stories, so to speak. But I can tell you that the students who are at our school, they really, especially if they're coming from an urban environment, they really have a transformation because of the place-based environmental education that they're receiving. And one of our students was able to, the University of Hawaii has a campus up there, Windward Community College as well, that we partner up with. And she got really into Hawaiian native species, and she started a farm on our campus, which is beautiful, and it continues to grow. And then she got really into microbiology too. And so she married those ideas at Windward Community College, dove deep, and then when she graduated, she went to Stanford, and she's at Stanford right now, and she's continuing down that same path, right, of exploring Hawaiian indigenous species and understanding kind of the roots of how this place originally grew food and also the flora and fauna here. So that's the kind of story that we're trying to allow for our students to have the opportunity to, depending on their passion.
Right. So in the totality, then all of those bright lights, those specific stories like the one you just referenced, then become sort of a fulfillment of the mission statement itself, that you're cross-hatching in that way and giving kids those opportunities.
And I would say, I mean, it's not like we don't have tech options here too, right? I mean, Honolulu, right down the road from our school, an hour drive from our school. But we have a student who, we do internships as part of our high school curriculum, and he interned over here at Blue Hawaii, which is like building these off-grid batteries, and he had such an impressive internship with them. They then hired him back for summer, right? And like that's what we're looking for. We're looking for students who are growing in areas that they're passionate about, that they want to continue to grow in, and it's as authentic as it gets. And then they're actually working on their off times on those same projects.
Awesome. So, Chris, for question number 8, I'm actually going to dig a little bit deeper into specifically your position as the principal of the K-12 continuum at Asia Pacific. So it was super fascinating for me to read your quote-unquote academics at Asia Pacific page on your website. If I were a parent, I would be pretty intrigued by the fact that your school appears to be developing a K-12 continuum, which is often absent on campuses with siloed elementary, middle, and high schools. So this is a moment for you to actually speak to other leaders at other schools, public, private, and charter, but really mostly private, I think. What message do you have for other schools that are struggling to put in place a whole school K-12 continuum for their students?
It is
How do you
so
do that?
powerful that when I have faculty meetings, I have everyone from my kindergarten teacher to my senior teachers present. And I have to navigate what makes the most sense. What's the powerful components that impact everyone, and what needs to be separate dialogues. But within that, I get to create the umbrella of pedagogy for everybody, or not just create, but I get to also help implement and also just kind of continue to provide resources for them to explore what learning looks like at APIS. I think it is very different still to talk to especially elementary, middle versus high school teachers on how they're implementing a more authentic curriculum because when it comes down to it, in high school, we have some pretty specialized courses that in many ways feel like we have to get through certain academic content because that's what's expected in academia. So if somebody is to continue, like my brother's a mathematician, a University of Kentucky professor, and he went to MIT, he did all these great things, but he couldn't have gotten there if he hadn't taken Algebra 2, which you're like, well, when do I ever use Algebra 2 in my life otherwise, right? Or pre-calc, or calculus, calculus A, calculus B, whatever, all those things he had to have taken in order to continue to move down the academia route. But not all students are going to do that.
Right.
And so the reason I'm bringing that up is because when I'm trying to assist a high school teacher teaching hard sciences or math specifically, and bringing that pedagogy, that project-based pedagogy, which, by the way, I have a certain qualm with the word project because it has a derogatory meaning for those of us who had projects in elementary and middle school back in the day. But that problem-based learning curriculum, or that deeper learning curriculum that we're trying to, that pedagogy that we're trying to build as a school, it's really a different dialogue. It's like, okay, I'm teaching this specific thing in chemistry right now about copper, and then I'm talking to my kindergarten teacher who's teaching about human body, and the way I can offer a pedagogical, a more problem-based pedagogical approach to each is tricky. It's tricky.
It is.
It is.
Right.
And I have to navigate it more carefully, it feels like, in a high school setting. So what I'm saying there is this. It is good for everyone to hear what authentic learning looks like and how to tie things to essential questions and experiences and experts and exhibitions. And yes, even our chemistry class, and yes, even our pre-calculus class will have exhibitions at our school. So they do find ways of connecting what they're learning to something that is exhibitable. So I think that's really important to have certain expectations across the school, but my dialogue with them is so different. But I do think it's beautiful that I can help shape that from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, not just in school, but also programmatically or outside of school as well.
Right, right. So thank you for what you said about algebra. Josh Rapun, I'm coming out today and telling everyone in the world that my hatred for algebra is beyond all bounds. So much of my life was lost in algebra that I'll never get back. So anyway, be that as it may, sorry for that slight side tangent. So great segue, Chris, to question number 9. So your website mentions project-based learning as being at the heart of your school's culture. So the question is, how have you been able to get faculty, staff, parents, students kind of speaking a common language about PBL so that it's not some sort of confusing tower of linguistics?
Sure. It's one of the most beautiful things when you can found a school on this pedagogy.
Right.
What other schools are saying that, right? Because so many are trying to adopt parts of it.
Right.
But we founded our school on this pedagogy here in Hawaii. So from the very beginning, the Bucks Institute was a part of what we were.
Yeah.
From the we got
PBL works.
Robert Kuhl, one of the high-tech high leaders, he came over and was a principal for one of the years at our school.
Yeah.
And he brought so much expertise in this area of what it looks like and connecting dots that we were still navigating as a school to where we feel like, okay, like we see who we are and we see the elements that are necessary to provide the most authentic curriculum. And we're still navigating some of those pieces. Authenticity doesn't mean we're impact of the world always.
Right.
Authenticity can come in the context you're providing for students. Authenticity can come in the tasks, the tools that they're using. Authenticity can come in the personal experiences of those students, not just the impact of the world. So that's something that feels the most, maybe one of the biggest obstacles to teachers is when we say PBL, they might say, I don't know how I'm going to change the world this year. And it's like, well, that's a big jump to make. You don't need to change the world. There's a lot of ways of providing authenticity in where we're at. One of the other biggest hurdles here is the word project, which I mentioned just a little bit ago there, because a teacher thinks, oh, okay, I'm going to have one project on the side for one period a day where I'm going to do that. And it's like, that's not what we're talking about. We don't care about projects. Like, that's not what this is. This is about deeper learning, building that umbrella of authenticity, personalization, and integration, allowing teachers to work together, providing a flexible environment for teachers to work together so that something greater is achieved. So I can give you countless examples of this. Let me just give one example of this. A heroes unit that our grades 5 and 6 did together. They were looking at how are people heroes and what are the traits of heroes? Okay, those are their essential questions that are building everything off of it. Then they say, okay, what experts can be a part of what we're studying here? Okay, so we're going to interview. So that's their interviewing skills, journalism ideas there. We're going to interview firefighters, local firefighters, and ask them specifically, like, why did they get into that profession? Okay, but then they're also doing research. Right? So they're going to research specific figures of history that they've chosen, student voice and choice, and they're going to research specific things about them and then team up with the art teacher to create kind of comic books of these heroes of history that they're going to exhibit. But that just touches the surface of authenticity because, we've talked to firefighters. That's great. We've got some experts. We've got some integration here with the art teacher where we're building in a collaborative process here where outside of their core class, they're also doing this. But then it was, how can we become heroes, right? What kind of things can we do to become heroes right now? Well, that's an overwhelming question to ask to a student because not everyone has Malala's incredible story, right? So then they said, well, one thing we could do is, we live next to an ocean. How scary is it that kids go swimming? Things could happen. So what if we were CPR first aid trained ourselves? So they invited a CPR first aid trainer, and they then had that person lead multiple lessons in that. And when it came time for exhibition, their comic book stuff were there. Definitely the firefighters were, shown off. But in addition, they led groups of everyone who was there, parents, families, kids, in different lessons on how to save somebody's life, how to perform CPR, what do you do for a deep wound bandage situation, which could easily happen in our environment where we live. And it was so powerful. And
that's a deeper learning deep dive.
That's what we're looking for
sure.
On a regular basis. And we often have it. So
that's awesome. Okay, so we have arrived at question number 10. Okay. And in your case, Chris, I actually invited someone else to ask this question. So my good friend Robert Landau, who's the head of school at Maui Prep and who's a coach's coach and was the former executive director for the Hawaii Association of Independent Schools, and also has a long history in international schools in Asia and also in Switzerland.
Absolutely.
So I reached out to Robert. And so I know that your school supports the Global Issues Network, aka GIN, here in Hawaii and at your campus in Korea. So Robert's question was, what is GIN and how does it support schools' approach to project-based, problem-based, challenge-based teaching and learning? But I'm going to tack on my own part to Robert's question, which is, because we're at the end and I want to ask the same question of everybody, I want to fold into it, what could school be?
Sure.
Awesome.
Sure.
Let her rip.
The Global Issues Network is a chance for students to not just explore and create projects or not projects, solutions or ideas for how they can help better the world, but they also do it locally, which helps. And it's very student-driven. It's just so student-driven. In fact, the GIN network, the GIN big, what is it called?
Infrastructure,
or even their big meeting later this year is all run by students, which is so powerful. And our students in the past have specifically, one of the projects I remember is creating evacuation plans for our community in Hauula because we're in a tsunami evacuation zone. Actually, our school is the tsunami evacuation zone. So they helped our school create a plan for what would happen in the case of not just tsunamis, but all different natural disasters. And then they met with the community leader and group and presented their plan and it's ongoing conversations. Even now, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be meeting again. And those students have already graduated, but what they've done for us continues to live on. So I kind of find it as a possible capstone, culminating experience, or just a part of their journey in high school for tapping into issues globally, but also locally, and how can they be a part of solving those issues. So as far as what school could be, is that the question?
It is.
Okay, what school
your
could
last
be?
question.
Okay, so personally, I believe school is opportunity, and I could end there. But I believe that it's a place where relationships are founded that will impact children forever. When I was in 5th grade, I remember my teacher. I wrote in that year, I'm going to be a 5th grade teacher when I grow up. And in the yearbook, you can still see it there. And I was a 5th grade teacher when I graduated from college. Teachers can make a difference, and they can make a difference for students to have other student relationships too. And that's as powerful as any, because I find in this abundant world where we have so much in this first world that we live in, students have a hard time finding purpose. And a lot of that is they don't understand what's coming at them. They're not ready and prepared for those changes, but majority of that is the relationships that they have. So I think it is most important that schools continue to provide opportunity and relationships. I think they need to provide opportunity for students to understand that this is a global, this world is getting smaller all the time. And if we can provide opportunities for students to live somewhere else and study somewhere else, or at least explore other places at an earlier age, I think it gives them a leg up when they get down the road there. I think we have a micro school we built in Hawaii. Why? Because the West, East, and West. What's the center of East and West? Hawaii, right?
Absolutely.
It's awesome. It's a great place to be able to study both sides of the equation. And what's to say why not start more campuses other places so that we just continue to have locations where students can study and see that the world is much smaller than they think. Opportunity, relationships.
Chris Stapleton, principal at the Asia Pacific International School on Oahu in Hawaii. It's been a blast having you on the podcast today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Season 1, Semester 2 of the What School Could Be in Hawaii podcast. We are so excited to share all of the new educators for this month. So coming up next week is Lori Kui, a 4th grade teacher at Alavai Elementary School.
Find the What School Could Be in Hawaii podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher, as well as at mltsinhawaii.com.
Join the ongoing conversation across social media. Look for Most Likely to Succeed in Hawaii on Facebook and at MLTS in Hawaii on Instagram and Twitter. Tag your posts with hashtag #WhatSchoolCouldBe, hashtag Deeper Learning, hashtag EdChat, and hashtag Education.
Our next interviews will be recorded on Saturday, February 22nd. You can join us in the studio through the magic of Facebook Live. Find us at the Most Likely to Succeed in Hawaii Facebook page.
We want to hear from you. Send your comments, questions, and feedback to mltsinhawaii@gmail.com.
If you love this podcast series, we would really appreciate a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. It's the best way to help us reach a wider audience of innovative educators.
And please feel free to share this series with colleagues, friends, and family.
Your host is Josh Rapoon.
Our podcast consultant and sound engineer is Ryan Ozawa.
The editor for this episode is Marlon Utrera. Our post-production student manager is May Kanata, under the guidance of Matthew Williams. Learn more at hawkmediaproductions.com.
And special thanks to Ted Dintersmith, author and education change agent.
Now, off to your next epic adventure. Class dismissed.